Donald Trump's hostility toward South Africa has reached an all-time high as the controversy over the land reforms grows. Even though Trump revealed to end all aid for South Africa and sent its ambassador to the United States back, he did not stop there. Advised by Elon Musk, who seems too biased against South Africa despite being its citizen, Trump is now taking the battle to a whole new level. Because Trump made decisions abruptly, this very weakness was used to take revenge on South Africa. Since South Africa has launched historic land reforms aimed at giving back the robbed land from the local black population during the apartheid period, the white elite class in South Africa wanted to stop that. Using their influence, they tried misrepresenting what was happening in the land reforms, portraying it as if all land from white farmers would be taken into custody. As a result, Trump has revealed a secret and shocking for these white South African farmers, and this changes everything. But what is it? In this video, let's find out. In a move that sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles, Donald Trump has just rolled out an explosive plan to grant white South African farmers a fast-track pathway to U.S. citizenship, a decision that has ignited fierce debate. But this is far bigger than just immigration. This new deal isn't just about farmland, Afrikaners, or even South Africa itself. It's about power, influence, and reshaping global politics. It all began on February 2nd, when Donald Trump took to social media in his signature bombastic style, launching a full-scale attack on South Africa's government. In a fiery post, he accused South Africa of committing massive human rights violations against white farmers, alleging that the government was actively seizing their land without compensation. His words were nothing short of incendiary. He said that South Africa is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly. He also said that a massive human rights violation is happening and that the United States won't stand for it and will act. With this single statement, Trump sent South Africa into the global spotlight, not for its economic policies, its role in BRICS, or its influence in African affairs, but for what he framed as a racially motivated crisis targeting white South Africans. His attack didn't stop there. He followed it up with an even more drastic declaration. He said that he would be cutting off all future funding to South Africa until a full investigation of this situation has been completed. In one stroke, Trump effectively weaponized U.S. foreign policy, imposing financial and political pressure on South Africa in a way rarely seen against any Western ally. But what was truly remarkable about this sudden outburst was how selective and hypocritical it was. Trump had largely ignored far more severe human rights violations happening elsewhere in the world, whether it was the treatment of Palestinians in Gaza or even internal racial injustices within the United States itself. Yet, when it came to white South African farmers, Trump not only noticed, he acted with urgency. The question then is why? What made South Africa, and specifically its land reform policies, such a burning issue for Trump? To understand why Trump went after South Africa, we need to look at the core issue that triggered his outrage: the country's land expropriation policy. South Africa has one of the most deeply unequal land ownership structures in the world, a lingering consequence of centuries of colonialism and apartheid. Despite white South Africans making up only 7% of the population today, they still own over 72% of all privately held farmland. This staggering imbalance exists because, under apartheid, Black South Africans were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands and placed into segregated areas, leaving the vast majority of fertile agricultural land in the hands of white settlers. The South African government has long promised land reform as a means to correct this historical injustice, but for decades, progress has been painfully slow. In an attempt to accelerate the process, South Africa introduced a new land expropriation law, which would allow the government to reclaim unused or unproductive land and redistribute it to landless Black South Africans. But here's the catch. Trump and his allies framed this policy as a direct attack on white farmers, portraying it as a land grab, and, in extreme cases, even calling it a genocide. This was not just factually incorrect, but wildly misleading. The South African government made clear that land expropriation would be limited to cases where land was not being utilized productively. There were no policies targeting farmers based on race. And yet, Trump chose to present it as an organized racial purge, an angle that conveniently played into far-right conspiracy theories championed by white nationalist groups in the US and abroad. This begs another question. Why was Trump so invested in this issue at all? Why would a US president, notorious for neglecting international human rights issues, suddenly become the world's loudest advocate for white South African farmers? The answer lies in who was feeding him this narrative. Yes, it was Elon Musk. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black Africa. Let's continue now. Musk, the South African-born billionaire and CEO of Tesla, SpaceX, and Starlink, has been an increasingly vocal critic of South Africa's Black economic empowerment laws. The core of Musk's frustration is South African business regulations that require foreign companies to be at least 30% owned by historically disadvantaged groups, which means that if Musk wants to bring Starlink to South Africa, he would have to give up a share of ownership to Black South Africans. And white supremacists are not used to doing that. Therefore, instead of complying with the law, Musk lashed out on social media, saying that Starlink was not allowed to operate in South Africa because he was Black. This was a blatant misrepresentation. South Africa's government immediately responded, clarifying that all foreign businesses, regardless of who owns them, must adhere to local equity laws. But Musk's false claim ignited a firestorm among his millions of right-wing followers, turning a simple business regulation into a racial grievance. And then, just days later, Trump echoed Musk's rhetoric, launching his attack on South Africa's land policies. Was this a coincidence? Highly unlikely. Musk, one of Trump's most influential advisors, has been openly lobbying against South Africa's economic policies, particularly those that restrict foreign corporate control. His interests align perfectly with Trump's America First agenda, prioritizing corporate control, opposing land reforms, and resisting racial equity policies. By painting South Africa as a villain, Trump and Musk could justify economic pressure and potential sanctions, ensuring that the country remains more favorable to Western business interests. Therefore, to add even more pressure, Trump offered white South African farmers U.S. citizenship. However, that was not the only reason. At this point, the real question becomes clear. Why is Donald Trump so invested in South Africa's land policies? Why has he chosen to single out white South African farmers for special treatment while ignoring similar or even more severe human rights concerns elsewhere? One major factor is Trump's political strategy. His core voter base thrives on narratives of white victimhood, particularly in an era where demographic shifts and cultural changes in the U.S. have intensified fears of racial displacement among conservatives. By presenting himself as the defender of white South Africans, Trump taps into this deep-seated anxiety, reinforcing the idea that he alone stands against the so-called global persecution of white people. This not only solidifies his grip on far-right voters in America, but also strengthens his appeal among international nationalist movements that share similar racial grievances. Another critical angle is Trump's deliberate creation of a white refugee crisis. By fast-tracking citizenship for white South Africans, he is setting a clear racial precedent that white immigrants are welcome, while non-white migrants face border walls, deportation, and detention centers. This racially selective immigration policy exposes a glaring double standard in Trump's approach to asylum. He has spent years demonizing asylum seekers from Latin America, Haiti, and Africa, people who are fleeing gang violence, war, and extreme poverty. Yet when it comes to white South Africans, he is personally ensuring their smooth relocation to the United States. Beyond political optics, Trump's actions also serve as a warning to other African nations considering land reform. South Africa is not the only country exploring policies to redistribute land seized during colonial rule. Namibia, Zimbabwe, and Kenya have all debated or implemented similar measures. with varying degrees of success and controversy. By punishing South Africa economically, Trump is sending a message that if any other African country attempts to reclaim land from white landowners, America will retaliate. This is a classic carrot-and-stick approach. Protect white land ownership, and you remain in Washington's good graces. Challenge it, and the U.S. will use economic warfare and diplomatic isolation against you. Lastly, there is the issue of economic control. South Africa has been drifting further from Western influence, aligning itself more closely with China, Russia, and BRICS. This shift threatens America's long-standing economic dominance in Africa, particularly in sectors like energy, minerals, and trade. By cutting aid and imposing sanctions, Trump is attempting to strong-arm South Africa into compliance, forcing it to reconsider its geopolitical alliances and remain economically dependent on Western interests. Unsurprisingly, South Africa has outright rejected Trump's accusations. President Cyril Ramaphosa has taken a firm stance, declaring that South Africa will not be bullied and dismissing the white farmer crisis as a fabricated narrative pushed by right-wing groups and foreign interests. What do you think? Why is Trump offering U.S. citizenship to white South African farmers? Do you feel there is an ulterior motive behind Trump's New Deal? In the comment section right below, share your thoughts on whether South Africa should give a bold answer and offer South African citizenship to the American Black population because they are oppressed there. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring videos on Black Africa, its history, rich arts and culture, and things the world should know about. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.